Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Africa's Straight Talk. We are Africa's unapologetic podcast that dives deep into the African immigrant experience in a unique and straightforward way. My name is Kaboshi, and we truly appreciate your continued support of our podcast. Joining me today are my esteemed co-hosts, Emmanuel Nadeau, host of Africa Mix on KLW in San Francisco and curator of African Night, an event celebrating music and African diaspora conversations, and the one and only Kwesi Wilson, a communications studies professor at College of Alameda and the host of the podcast Telling Tall Stories. Let's get started. I want to have a check-in with all you guys, Kwesi and Nado, just to see where you guys are in your mental health at this time of the year.
Well, is it okay? I can speak first?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, well, then...
Don't listen to Kwesi.
Oh, Kwesi, you are too much.
I know.
We need a tiebreaker.
Well, I am doing well. Last Friday, I went to see Chimamanda Adichie.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
At the City and Lecture, the place was packed. It was sold out. This venue, the Goldstein Theater in San Francisco, the capacity was 1685, and there were no room.
Wow.
So it was a very good lecture she gave.
Was it San Francisco or San Jose?
San Francisco.
Okay, she was in San Jose too. Go ahead.
Yeah, So then I got a signed copy of her book.
Oh,
free. She gave it to me, and
you should have had her sign my name.
Well, you were not there. A new book, Dream Count. It was very interesting,
Oh, nice.
Otherwise, like everyone in America today, we are in a state of crisis with symptoms of anxiety and depression, and with many experiencing decline in the mental well-being, compared to the previous year. I try to maintain calmness and do my best not to watch and read the political news. I used to be a news junkie, but now I am really covering my ears so as not to hear the political upheavals. I just want nothing to stress me out.
Yeah, absolutely feel you on that one. This past weekend, I went to see a friend of mine who had a stroke last year. And although he's doing so much better, actually, than last December, the road to recovery is very long. And it got me wondering about myself and what happens to me if I should get so terribly sick that I cannot vocalize anything or I cannot do the things that I've been doing pretty much all my life. So it's been a weekend of thought for myself. Yeah. What about you, Kwesi? What's going on with you?
Yeah,
how are you doing?
A lot going on. I'm okay. I'm okay. I go through my. It's been a roller coaster thing, but for the most part, I'm okay.
Okay.
And like Nado, I have been staying away from the news.
Yeah.
I'm a news junkie like Nado. I grew up, journalism is my thing, but I don't even want to hear the political. It just for my mental health. I stay away from that. But I do go through little spurts of fear. The fear that maybe we may go to war or something like that will come destroy the country. Like maybe like somebody taking advantage of a weak president to come attack us. Or, nuclear weapons being, everywhere. I do go through that worry, that concern. that maybe we could burst into a whole full-on civil war, race war, or something.
Yeah.
You know, people have been having little talks about that. I've heard little whispers here and there, but I tried to shift my mind away from it. And I think going to Ghana this summer will probably take me away from this for a while.
And I think having a break is important. You know, a long break, not just 2 days or something.
And especially in Europe. In Europe and France, I mean, I was listening to some of the parliament there. They're having a speech about the Ukraine, how Trump humiliated Zelensky, and they all full fought behind Zelensky, supporting him.
Right.
And even the French president, he's like a warmonger. He's talking about, you know, putting boots
on the ground.
Boots on the ground. And some of the French population say, we don't want anybody to go over there to die. So, I agree with you, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I just go through the fear test a weak president, you know, and I think about people like King Leopold, you know, who had similar tendencies like Trump and had this delusions of grandeur, you know, and would want to do something big to show that, you know, all this other stuff. That economic anxiety is something else too that we're talking about. But the other thing too that has been going on is I've had several people around me lose people, like lots of deaths recently, which makes this a great segue into what we want to talk about today, the issue of grieving in the African community, right? And we have a wonderful guest here today. Her name is Alimatu Kamara. So a little bit about who she is. Alimatu is a dedicated mental health therapist with 13 years of experience supporting individuals and families through some of life's most challenging moments. As the East Regional Clinician in Juvenile Probation for San Diego County, she plays a vital role in guiding justice-involved youth towards healing and transformation. Her work spans group homes, schools, and social services, where she has provided individual, family, and couples therapy. With a deep expertise in grief counseling, Alimatu helps clients navigate the complexities of culture, race, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, and disability. I mean, it looks like she touches everybody, right?
You know, yeah.
At the heart of her work is a passion for fostering resilience and growth in the communities she serves. Beyond her practice, Alimatu stays engaged through industry research, advocacy work, volunteer work, and ensuring she remains attuned to the evolving needs of those she supports. So please, where's the drum roll? Please.
Oh, drum roll.
Wow. Well, not the European drum, but you know, like the African drum.
We're
talking drums.
Drummer here. The talking drum, the gongo. Right.
The dum dum.
There you go. Okay, guys.
Oh my goodness. What an intro. What an intro. I definitely agree with the drum. The drum has to be specific. Okay, this is not a regular band. This is some African deep-rooted drums.
Right.
Exactly.
Come on, we're on it.
Yeah, the drum with the spirit in it.
Exactly. For the ancestors to rise. That's the one that wakes them up, you know?
They say the drum is the heartbeat of Africa.
Yes.
That's it.
And that was the first tweet. Because they used to set up drums every so many distance, and they drum, and that was the first Twitter before, this era.
Oh, nice.
But Alimatu, we're looking for you to guide us through this whole complex topic of grieving. What is grief?
Well, first of all, I want to thank y'all for having me. I think this is an amazing platform. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. I think this is wonderful for our community. Just because our community has not really soaked themselves yet into the mental health field and being able to acknowledge some challenges that may occur in people's lives. So I think this is a good segue for those that, may not be necessarily open yet to having be assessed or to seek mental health. So thank you guys for that. So to jump into what grief is a natural emotional response to loss. Typically, historically too, it's been associated with the death of a loved one, but it can also stem from other significant losses, like the end of a relationship, the loss of stability, the loss of just some major life changes. It can compress a range of emotions such as sadness, anger, confusion, sometimes even a relief or numbness. So it just depends on the specific situation. But grief is much more than just death. It's a loss, and that loss can range from different capacities in your life.
Does grief manifest itself differently in various age groups? Example, older adult versus young adults, or versus teens, or versus children? And what are the indicators so that one is grieving?
That is a great question. So it does. It impacts all age ranges differently. For example, children under 10, usually they don't really fully understand the permanence of death, and their grief often shows up in behaviors, nightmares, regression, such as bedwetting, or things they used to do when they were a little bit younger, and now it's kind of coming back to surface, or separation anxiety, right? When somebody close to them passes away, now they're more attached to a parent and not wanting to be by themselves, just out of that fear of possibly losing another person, even though they don't really understand what has happened. For teens, it's slightly different. It's almost the same, but slightly different. So teens struggle more with expressing their emotions directly. They might become more withdrawn, irritable. That's when we see a little bit of attitude in our teens, really snippy, short-tempered. And acting out as well. They can also be seen in behaviors. Some may seek, comfort from their peers rather than family. Of course, teens always think nobody really understands what they're feeling, except other teens like them, not realizing we were all teens before. So if you see your teen reverting more to their peers than you, don't take it personal. We've all been there, thinking the world doesn't really understand us. Young adults that are maybe transitional from teens to adults, they often understand the impact on their future in loss. So they may question their purpose or struggle with the major life transition after a loss. This is where those moments come of why me, or, why is this happening right now? And then the older adults, they experience more compound grief. They're the ones that hold grief more. It's a little heavier for them, especially if they've experienced multiple losses over time. It's kind of like a layer that keeps packing on. One person passes away, another person passes away, and it's almost like a reflection of the possibility that they might be getting closer to that outcome as well, right? And sometimes realizing that is scary, and it may lead to, so they express it more of feelings of loneliness. And sometimes we see older adults isolating, just because of being able to process and think, this might be me. And as we know, death, we don't know when it's coming. And so they tend to be more depressed about the ideology that they might be next on the list. So that's how it affects all age ranges.
Cool. Let me probe you a bit before the next question. Can this effect be delayed?
Which effect?
So the grief, let's say the effect on
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Grief can delay over time. You can see immediate grief. And the thing about grief, it doesn't really have a timeline. And that's kind of the basis I really wanted to highlight on today. Grief doesn't have a timeline. And I think society has given us timelines. For example, when you taking time off of work, they give you a certain amount of days. And that's not going to ever fulfill or allow you to process grief. So we tend to put timing on grief. And grief is a lifelong process on all ages. You never truly get over the loss of somebody. What happens is you get more comfortable with their absence, and then you learn to cope better. But at any time, grief can hit you. You can wake up one day and feel it as if it just occurred. And if any of you have lost somebody, you can relate to what I'm saying. There are times that something, maybe you will smell a certain food that person liked or used to make for you, and instantly that grief can hit you. Or it could be years and it hits you just walking down the street. So it's a lifelong process. And I think if I want to highlight anything, I think we need to get out of that mindset that grief has a time. It doesn't. It feels like the day it happened every single time.
Yeah. I mean, what you said is so true, because for me, the last 5 years, I have lost so many family members, so many brothers and sisters, and it's kind of hard to grieve. I grieve them individually. It's like there are times that all of a sudden I'm thinking about my sister who died 4 years ago, and then my brother that died 2 years ago, and so forth. So the delay thing is really true, and also selective, as a matter of fact.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you make a great point. You tend to grieve people individually because it's almost a way of honoring their memory. And if you imagine how many losses you've had in your life, I'm not sure how many, but imagine having to feel all of that all at once. Could be, can immobilize you. You could literally get in a state of depression that you cannot get out of. So I'm glad that you're able to process differently for each individual you've lost.
Yeah, I had about, 6 family members that passed away the last 5 years.
Wow. Oh, wow.
That's a lot.
That's like one every year. That's hard.
Over in Africa.
Close
and I never
family members.
Oh, yeah, brothers and sisters.
Wow.
I never had a chance to, to attend a funeral. And
wow.
So I try very hard sometimes to get it out of my mind, but then it comes and then, it's terrible.
Yeah. Wow. Speaking of Africa, within African communities here, do you see an openness to grief counseling? If no, what are the barriers? And if you see an openness to grief counseling, what is driving that?
Great questions. So with our community, and this is literally why I love doing these kind of things, I feel like when I went into mental health, I really wanted to bring it back to my community. Just because, funny story, when I told my mom, like I was in nursing school and I told her I wanted to be a therapist, she's like, how are you going to make money? Hey, Jesus, this and that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, make money. Yeah. And I'm just like, I just want to do something. I've always been good at giving advice and listening and holding space for people. Kwasi can tell you, I'm very open, and I'm very friendly when you meet me. And so I say this because I want to tie it back to our community. So being able to bring this kind of psychoeducation back to the community is big for me. And it's something that it's an honor for me to even be here. So often with our communities, I see a lot of mixed responses. I will say it's better now than during the time of my mother when she was younger and we just moved to this country, right? She was, her reaction is based off of the time we were also in, right? Mental health wasn't seen as even being part of the health department. And so look at where we are now. And so with that in mind, there's often a mixed response. In some African communities, grief is seen as a private and spiritual matter, where people rely on more family and close community or religious support rather than professional counseling. So that ties now into the barrier. This is a barrier because it can include stigma around mental health, lack of cultural response to care, or the belief that grief is something you just get through. Again, that instant response to it, right? You're just supposed to, somebody passes, you acknowledge it, and you're supposed to just kind of kick into gear and continue life. However, in families where younger generations have been exposed to mental health awareness, this is where we're relying on the younger folks that are in families to be more open. They're more open to grief counseling, and they see the benefit of that professional guidance, especially when grief starts to impact their daily life. It makes me so proud, and I smile every time I'm hearing young people talk about their mental health and look at what y'all just did when you opened up the show, checking in. These are the ways that we have evolved, even as a community, to be able to say, how are you guys doing? It's March. How is your mental health? That's huge. Something so simple, because you don't know what the next person sitting next to you may be going through. And us Africans, we've been raised up to kind of carry our burdens within our family or within our own individual self. And you only share with the community. You don't share your dirty linens, as you know, essentially. And so that includes feelings. We tend to not share our feelings. When people ask you, how are you doing? You tend to be more like, I'm doing good, even though deep inside you may be struggling, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to invite people in. And so that's the same thing with, you know, kind of grief, how people see mental health and how open they are to grief counseling. So we're getting better, but the barrier is definitely that spirituality as well, because a lot of people come from religious background where you're just supposed to pray things away, pray yourself through things. And
go
ahead. And as a Christian, I'm a Christian myself, but at the same time, you know, prayer without works, I mean, doesn't get you anything but that. You know, if you're feeling something so heavy and you pray about it and you're still heavy, then what does that mean? It means you need more, you know? And what is wrong with seeking more? Because prayer might have worked for one death, but what if it's a layer, like, you know, like somebody shared here? What if you've been impacted by death back to back? Are you going to just continue to pray and hope for the best? No, sometimes you need more.
Yeah, you touched on some of the benefits, right? And I wanted to really get you to expand on that a bit. So for that person who is attributing a spiritual solution to grief, right? Let's pray about it, you know. What do you tell that person that, you know, how do you persuade that person that therapy, you know, is a more prudent approach?
Yeah.
If in fact that is a more prudent approach.
Right. Okay. Thank you for saying that, because I was going to say I wouldn't necessarily say it's the more, you know, more prudent approach. I would address it simply by saying, hey, you know, it's good for people to have a foundation, and religion, family, those are foundational things. And it's great because it tells me you're rooted in something. You're rooted in a community, and that's important in mental health. We tend to ask people to build their community, to make sure they have one, because just when you sit in a room with me for an hour each week, I'm not going to be able to follow you in life and continue to impact your life in that way.
Right.
What I'm doing is guiding you so that when you go back to your community, you're continuing to open up with people. You're continuing to communicate your feelings. You're continuing to seek help from those that are more permanent in your life rather than the therapist who is a temporary person. So even us, we want you to have something else, you know? And so I would always introduce it as, hey, it's beautiful that you have a spiritual life. It's great that you have a foundation of faith that you can always revert to in times of struggle, in times of you know, of challenges in life. We all need that. Now, in addition to that, it would be nice for you to sit with somebody and explore some of the things, the internal things, and the things that go through your head when nobody else is in the room, when you're outside of your religious community, when you've prayed and you feel like you're not fulfilled yet. So it would be nice to just check in. I always tell people, go for at least one session and just see how it is, see how you feel about it. And even that one, it may not turn out to be the one, right? But it's an opportunity for you to see how not scary seeking help can be. Because sometimes we feel scared because we don't want people to judge our feelings. We don't know if somebody's gonna, and sometimes some of us, it's hard for us to carry people feeling empathetic towards us. We don't want nobody to feel sorry for us. Right? It makes us feel awkward when people are like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry this happened. Some people can't sit well with that, right? And empathy sometimes can come off overwhelming. I know for me, when I lost my father last year, September, I'm the type of person, I don't like when people are calling me to sympathize. It's weird, and I know they mean well, and our African people do it all the time. I got billions of calls, but it made me more sad. And I just wanted to be by myself. So for us, we all grieve differently. And being able to seek mental health services allows you to grieve in the way that you want to grieve.
And I know someone else has another question for you, but so what you're saying is, let's say I want to be left alone, right? That need to be left alone can be better highlighted if I did see the therapist for just that one session.
Yes, because being left alone, sometimes being alone for too long is also not good.
Yeah.
And so at least if you're practicing being able to process alone, you can do that in a therapeutic office, because there are times as therapists, we sit there and we just hold space. There are times I don't say nothing. I just leave the space for you. It's almost like I'm not in the room, but it's a safe space for that. So that at least there's that physical support without that verbal person trying to cheer you up, right? Trying to make you see the brighter light, or, the person might be in heaven now. Sometimes we don't want to hear that. Sometimes we just want to sit in a space and just be sad. And it's okay to sit in that sadness. It's okay to sit in that loneliness, because it is part of the process. The grieving process has to take its course. We're not expediting things. We need to allow people to feel what they feel when they feel it and acknowledge what they're feeling.
You're listening to Africa Straight Talk, your go-to place for African immigrant experience.
Alimatu, earlier you mentioned something that really struck a chord to me. You talk about the fact that Africans, most of the time, they grieve in secret. They don't want to wash their dirty laundry, in public. That is so true. I have an example, but I don't know if you are not a marriage counselor, but I want to know your thought on this. I had a friend many years back. I was married to an African-American sister, and they were having a lot of, marital issues. And she advised they go see a marriage counselor. He refused. He refused many times because he was saying that I don't want to go tell somebody else my problem, and that person will take my story and go write a book and make money off my story, and he didn't want anybody to know that they're having a problem, So, what would be your thought on a situation like that? I know you are not a marriage counselor.
I am a marriage counselor, actually.
Oh, you are.
Oh, wow.
My degree is in marriage and family therapy. So that's that AMFT portion. MFT
Wonderful.
for short. Yeah. So it's just that this population that I'm working with is teens, but I've done all aspects of the work. So yes.
Wonderful.
So I would say that sounds pretty normal in our community. I myself, not to make this completely, but I want to piggyback on this example. I myself have been married, and in my marriage, the therapist was recommending the therapist was recommending that we went and saw another therapist outside of me so that we can work on the marriage. And the partner that I had at the time was resistive. And so that marriage did not hold. And so I use that to highlight that I really don't blame a lot of us. Our culture has not been exposed to this form of handling things. And even those that are resistive, I'm always strength-based. I always look at things as a strength. I find the strength even in the most challenging circumstances. And the strength here that I hear about people who are resistive, especially our population, I look at it as a form of protection. They are protecting their family. To them, it's not like they don't want to. It's the protection that they're seeking, right? Now, where I would come in is to help to validate, hey, I get that you want to protect your family and privacy is so important to you. I hear you. How about I explain to you the process? Because some of them don't really understand the process.
Yeah.
And so they're going off of the fact that they haven't even explored what it even means or what happens when you go to a therapist. You know what I'm saying? And so being able to express and explain the process to people sometimes allows them to feel less anxious to even want to explore it, explaining, hey, when you go there, you're talking to a stranger you've never met before. Somebody you may most likely never run into again.
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, if you're worried about your therapist running into them in Oakland or in the Bay Area, hey, there's online people who are in a different state doing different things. You can do that. You can seek telehealth, right? You're not limited to just one form of seeking treatment. And then also emphasizing there are laws that protect you and your information. And if these laws are violated by your clinician or by your therapist, there are fines and they can face jail time. So confidentiality, explaining HIPAA and what HIPAA means in the therapeutic world and how your records are protected.
You have to spell out HIPAA because not everyone just is health identity or something.
So HIPAA is a Health Identity Protection Act. And so this act was created to protect your personal information. So solicitors cannot come and take your information. And if your HIPAA rights are violated, so specifically it's Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, but I just always sum it up as it's your protection with your information. Even people close to you, your family members cannot call and ask for your info. Even if you give them consent, you have to get paperwork to sign. And if anybody violates your HIPAA rights, they can go to jail and pay a fine. And so a lot of the times people are protective of your information because nobody wants to go to jail. And surely the minimum fine is $10,000. So I surely don't have that in the bank. So I definitely make sure I'm not sharing information with anybody that has not signed a release of information form. So that's HIPAA. So I try to explain that to people before they hit that office. I even do it on the phone when I get referrals first, because again, people will be resistive to something they're not used to. And it is our job for those of us that are more self-aware to share the info. So for me, if you catch me and you're having a conversation with me, trust me, I'm going to be bringing up therapy. I'm going to be bringing up situations that are going to continue to encourage my community members to seek help, and I do it in my friendships. When I'm checking in on people, I'm texting and I'm sending them free hotlines, anything that can tie them in, because some are worried about, how do I pay for this? If they're not worried about protection, they're worried about the finances to afford it. You know what I'm saying? So there's always going to be a barrier. I think the more you know, the better you'll be able to make the decision on whether mental health services are right for you or not.
Yeah. I am wondering if grief and fear are almost similar.
So are you wondering, or are you telling me that you feel
I feel like they are.
Because I feel like you already got it. And I say that because you already hit it. You already hit it head on. It is they do have a correlation. Grief is a form of fear as well. Let's talk about the older adults, right? Their grief can be tied to the fear of maybe passing away.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So grief can and is correlated to fear. A lot of our mental health related issues stem from fear, actually. A lot of our mental health issues stem from fear, because once you start feeling like that, the brain is such a unique organ that it can make you believe something is real, even though physically it's not. Your brain has convinced you this thing is real. So therefore you are experiencing it as if it's happening. Yeah. And that's so if you are coming with fear is already embedded in you, your brain is going to take that and it's going to run with it, and it's going to create narratives that are not true, and it's going to put you in a rabbit hole that you yourself are going to be surprised at how deep you've gone in.
Yeah, I say that because I work at a nonprofit, and we deal with people with mental health issues all the time. But my staff is going through some family issues right now. Like the dad was in hospital recently, and I see she is going through something. And her dad, I think, is also going through something. And the way he's reacting to his situation is affecting the daughter. So I'm here trying to, figure out how to balance these two and try and make, we still have to operate. We still have to work in the office at the same time. We have to think about your mental health and make sure that you're operating okay. So it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Like a delicate dance.
It's really, really. That's what I was asking about fear and grief and similar.
And fear is it's being scared of the unknown. The unknown scare us. What we we know doesn't scare us. It's what we don't know that scares us.
Yes.
And so being able to process, what exactly are you afraid of? And if I had your friend in my office, that would be my question. What are you afraid of? And if they can't quite, okay, good. Okay, good. There we go. So if we know what the fear is and what is kind of feeding that fear, then we're able to unpack, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Is this something that has happened before? Are you carrying other grief and overlapping it? And now it's making you anxious that thinking everybody's going to pass? Eventually we are, but it's not every day that somebody's going to pass away in your family. Hopefully not.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? So, but if you continue to live in that fear, you're not allowing yourself to have the enjoyment of enjoying that time you do have with that person. Because now you've blocked yourself from actually spending time. And so you always have to ask, if anybody's in my room, I ask, what are you afraid of? And then I always ask a challenging question. What is the worst that could happen? Because your fear is telling you the worst case scenario. Now, how realistic is that worst case scenario? And sometimes it's not realistic. It's just our brain telling us something.
Tricking us.
Yes. So when you're asking, you're kind of normalizing the feeling, but you're also challenging their thought patterns to be able to say, yeah, so you are overthinking. And sometimes it's okay to say you are overthinking.
Yeah.
And it's okay, but try not to carry everything. Try to be able to release those fears. Talk to your dad about those fears. Tell him, hey, Dad, sometimes I wake up and I'm scared that you're going to pass away.
Yeah.
And it frightens me. So being able to let it go and release it, let it out into the environment. So you're not constantly carrying it. And so your dad can say, I may go one day, but hey, we have now, being able to.
The fun part? The African dad may be like, oh, you're trying to kill me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my mom will say, I got my mom comfortable with talking about death after my dad died. Because after my dad died, the same thing. I was like, Mom, you're going to die soon. So I want to make sure we have a plan in place for you when you do. I want to be able to honor you when you do pass. So how about we sit and talk about what you would like me to do in the instance you do pass? Because I was never prepared for my dad. So I'm trying to be prepared for you so that I can honor you and your legacy. And I want to make sure that would bring me more comfort to know that I did something that you had told me to do.
Currently in the same predicament with my dad. My auntie passed and there was chaos.
Yes, and that's what I try to avoid.
What to do. And he keeps, we did the will, but the funeral arrangements and all that sort of stuff. And we could go on and on. This is a very interesting topic. I didn't realize.
Kwasi, I wanna challenge you. I wanna give you Kwasi. Sorry, Kwasi. Hey, you see me?
Going for so long.
Hey, I'm telling you. It's my village people. Blame them. It's them.
Alimatu, in Ivory Coast, we say that we have Kwasi there.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Kwasi.
There we go.
And I've seen Kwasi too. I'm sorry, Kwasi.
Oh no, the Kwasi people, they still say Kwasi. They still say Kwasi.
They are from Ghana, Ashanti.
Yeah. So you see, it's your people. It's not even me. It's your own kind. It's your own people.
Yes.
But the recommendation I want to give you, have this conversation. Sometimes it's overwhelming for somebody to sit in one moment and talk about all of those things. Do it like when you guys are driving, and do it like conversational, and don't do it all at once. Maybe one day you ask a question like, if you were to pass, would you want to be cremated or would you want a casket? And then let them just answer that one question and leave that for that day. And then you make that note. So you're basically interviewing, but at different random times. That they're not even noticing that you're gathering information.
That is great.
What I've been asking them is for him to write it all down.
No, don't do it, because then it's going to be overwhelming. So you write it down, but you ask it in a way, hey, you're driving maybe to go eat. Hey, Dad, I was wondering, hey, I've always thought, for me, if I pass, I always like to use myself as an example so that it opens the room up, right? If I pass, I want to be cremated because I love the beach and I want to whatever, And so how would you like it? And then you make a mental note. When you go back, you write it down. And then at the end, when you've collected all the info you need, sit him down and show him, say, hey, in our different conversation, these are all the things that you've expressed to me. Take a look at it. See if there's anything you like to change or add to it. And next thing you know, he's like, oh my goodness, okay. You've done all the work because it's a lot for our parents.
Very good. I'm there this summer. And every weekend I visit with them. So I'm definitely going to take your advice. I think.
Yeah. Do it in small increments. It could be a lot to talk about it all at once.
So you won't be overwhelmed.
And scary.
The term is chunking. You do it in little chunks.
Chunks.
It allows you to,
Exactly. And it makes them not even pay attention to the fact of what you're even doing.
Right. Final question, though. Final question. Finally, it's about to go down.
Hey.
Finally, we're about to end now. Hey. Okay. So, have you encountered situations in your work? Well, actually, that's not the question I wanted to.
No, that's not the question. There's one more question.
The volunteer. Yes. Where do you volunteer?
Yes.
Look at Police Sergeant Nado. Okay, so that's not that one. Okay. Where do you volunteer? And can you speak a little about how volunteering helps you stay engaged and in tune to the needs?
Perfect.
I want to throw this one too. How do you take care of your mental health yourself too?
Oh, good. That's a great question. Okay. I could definitely answer all of that. So let me start with the volunteering. When I was in graduate school, part of our curriculum was finding an organization that we can volunteer at where we're not getting paid, we're not getting any kind of compensation, just as a way, one, of giving back. And then as an MFT, the foundation of MFT is being change-based. So we're very much about changing the world or impacting the world somehow. And that means the only way you can make an impact is to jump into the community. You can't make an impact from afar. You have to get in, you have to get dirty if they're dirty, and then take it from there. And so I don't have one specific location. I volunteer on various community-based settings. I make sure it's community-based. So it's homeless shelters, food banks. You know what I'm saying? If they're doing some kind of sometimes they do street feeding, I will volunteer for that where, we'll come together, put funds together and buy food or make food and then go around the community and feed people. So it primarily, it's my volunteer work is heavily within the community. So it's not at an organization, it's the community. So I look at what is the need in the community and then I decide where I'm going to volunteer. So that's how I work. And I like to bounce around too, because I don't want people to just get used to what I can bring to the table. I want it to be very selfless, because sometimes when you're spending too much time in an organization, they try to loop you into organization things. And where my purpose is just to help the clients. It's not to organize anything beyond that. I want to touch people directly, not become consumed back into a system. Right. And usually my work is youth who are at risk. Again, youth who are at risk of homelessness, youth who are at risk of, don't have enough food, being able to go to shelters and deliver food to different communities. So the way that this keeps me connected to real life experiences outside of my clinical setting is it allows me to better understand the challenges that are happening with young people and their families face on. And it also helps me to stay culturally competent and informed about, grassrooted solutions that communities often use for healing and support. So I want to know what people are doing to cope. I want to know if there's something new that people are starting in the community that's working for others. I want to be able to bring that back to my practice as well. And the only way to know that is to be in the community. I want to learn new interventions. I want to learn how cultures are impacted, especially with this new, I'm not going to get political, but especially with what is happening currently. I'll keep it very basic. It's impacting a lot of different cultures. And so being able to be, for example, there was a a protest that I participated in where no immigrants go to work that day. I actually called my office and I told them exactly what I'm doing. I said, hey, I am not coming to work today, not because I'm sick, but because I am actively in the community protesting as an immigrant, not going to work because I myself am an immigrant from Sierra Leone. And so for me, I want to be with my people protesting what is happening in this current administration because it's going to impact my people as well. And, I'm in San Diego, so I'm close to the border. So there's always an opportunity to get involved in the community. There's always something to do out here. That I can tell you.
So how do you
how do I take care of myself? Oh my goodness. Goodness. Socializing, being able to connect with my own people and my own circle of friends really, really keeps me grounded. My family keeps me grounded. I'm all about self-care. So one of the things I love about the company I work for is that every month they make us pick a day within that month where we're going to take that day as a mental health day. And you get to schedule it for yourself. And it can be random too. You can pick a day that day and call in and say, hey, I'm taking a mental health day. But they give you the capacity to schedule it or the capacity to just call in whenever you feel like it. So I love that. So I take use of that every month. And I also love to travel. So being able to get away from my practice helps me to kind of get my brain all cleared up. Because sometimes what can happen is secondary trauma. If I'm dealing with somebody else's trauma, it could definitely jump into me. And next thing you know, being the empath that I am, I'm carrying somebody else's grief. And now I'm bringing it home. And now I'm feeling it. I'm passing it on to my family. So being able to kind of separate myself every once in a while. If I'm not able to take a vacation, music is my coping skill. If I put music on, oh my goodness, it transforms me, takes me to a different place.
It's over.
It's over. You already know. You already know me on a personal level. So he can definitely speak on that. He knows me on a personal level to know that I'm a fanatic for music. Name a song and I can tell you everything. I can sing the whole song.
That's my song. That's my song.
Exactly. Every song is my song. So.
You know what I really think though? Sometimes I really think that when she talked about music, I go to the club, right? Sometimes when I used to go to the club a lot. And I see people dancing, and I could tell this is not just dancing for them.
Yes.
This is
healing.
Therapy.
This is healing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, this is when they forget about all their worries.
Everything, yes.
And the song becomes them, and they become the song. Sometimes when I watch people dancing, that's what it seems to be happening.
Yes. And you're absolutely correct. It's healing. It's healing for everybody.
I think music therapist now is a very, very, very
it's huge.
Hospital.
It's huge in my field. You know how much money people pay for sound baths and all of those things?
Exactly. So I have one more question for you, Salimatu.
Sure.
Now, we live in the world of social media, internet, everything is online. So I'm just wondering, are you mental health therapists do some counseling online on Zoom or what?
I do. So a big part of my work is I offer telehealth. The benefit, I will say, there's a positive that came out of COVID. Telehealth was a positive that came out of COVID because our code of ethics has always been face-to-face. And so telehealth has opened up where people are more able to seek out treatment a lot more often and are more consistent because it allows them to do it from the comfort of their own space. Right? And so that's the benefit. Yeah, I do offer telehealth, and I will recommend anybody, if they're not at least able or don't want to explore the physical face-to-face part of mental health, tap into telehealth. They even have text telehealth. I'm not into that because I really want to hear how a person is doing. So I'm able to study you and know when you're not having a good day by your voice and by how you present. So texting doesn't really allow that, but it works for some young people. So, you know, that's, hey, somebody, any way that works for you. If you like it, I love it, you know?
The Gen Zs.
The Gen Zs, yes. They could text all day. Me, once you start texting me 2 sentences, I'm ready for a phone call.
Yeah.
I'm like, can we just talk on the phone? Because
it's so much faster and so much better.
Yeah, and I love it more. It's more personable. You know, I'm a people person, so I want to hear you. I want to feel your emotion, you know?
Be the Grinch of this
very
fun
boo,
conversation.
Boo.
I'll take all the booze. Somebody got to take it. And you have all the tools to grieve your sorrow right now that we're ending, because grief is all about loss.
It's all about loss.
It's about loss. We're about to lose.
You're about to lose an interesting conversation. And special thank you to these nuggets of knowledge. We wish we could have stayed longer, that we've heard from Miss Kamara, or is this Mrs. Kamara yet? We don't know.
Oh,
Alimatu Kamara.
I've never changed my name yet, so don't get me started. Yes. That's a different podcast.
Right. But thank you so
Miss
much.
Kamara.
And please come back again. Please come back
yes,
again.
Please.
Yes, indeed.
We would love to have you again to continue this conversation.
So it's not a loss then. It's not a loss.
It's to be continued.
It's a pause. It's a pause, and we'll replay again another time.
Yeah,
thank you again
for having me. Thank you
for sharing these valuable information with us, and especially with the audience.
And I tell you, I love Freetown Calypso.
Hey, that's what's up. Hey, thank you. Oh shit.
I love Freetown Calypso. Yeah.
Nice. And that's a wrap for this episode of Africa Straight Talk. I, along with Emmanuel Nadeau and Kwesi Wilson, truly appreciate your support. We love to hear your thoughts, so don't be shy, just reach out. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Follow us on Twitter @Africans Talk, and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram by searching Africa Straight Talk. And of course, spread the word, tell a friend or 10 about us. Interested in sponsoring a growing podcast? Email us africastraighttalk@gmail.com. Until next time, Mzee Nado.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We invite you to check back here for our next one. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and love one another.